Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers,
Hello, how do you do? We are the boys in white and blue, and we're back with another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam territory at the University of beautiful British Columbia. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Pander.
And I'm Zachary Adam Eisenhammer.
And we're back with another packed show. We're going to be talking about the Canadian national team, World Cup qualifiers. We're going to be talking about the Whitecaps. We're going to be travelling around the world from the safety of our armchairs as we look at some talking points in North American football, African football, and European football. But before we get into any of that, it's a special episode of the AFTN Soccer Show this time around, because this episode falls in CITR Radio's Fund Drive, their annual fundraising initiative that they have at the radio station. This year they're targeting raising $25,000 to cover costs, equipment, training and a lot more besides. And they're looking for help from every listener of all the shows on the station, their members, their donors, the general public, everything like that. We've been on CITR Radio now since 2017. We're about to enter, actually this month, we're entering our 5th year on CITR Radio. And next month will be our 10th year of the podcast as well. So a couple of milestones getting reached this year in 2022. We're proud to be on CITR Radio when you've got sports radio stations closing down in other bits of the city, and the one sports radio station that does remain, the coverage that they give to the Whitecaps, let's be honest, it doesn't exist very much. Even the Whitecaps radio broadcasts have had to move to a traffic radio station so that they can get the airtime for that. But every week, I was going to say for 2 hours, that's maybe being a little generous, every week for 4 to 5 hours, CITR Radio turn the airwaves over for us to do our show. But we are pleased to be on CITR Radio. We look forward to another 5 years at least on the station. So if you do want to make a donation, head over to citr.ca/donate. You can donate any amount that you want. Depending on what you do donate this year, there's certain swag on offer. On that page as well, there is a bit to say, what show did you hear about this that's made you pledge your money? Please put the AFTN Soccer Show in there. We don't get a cut of the money, I would like to stress that. But it does help show that our listeners are listening to these shows and do care about CITR, stuff like that. But that is our start of Fund Drive. We'll mention it a couple more times over the course of the show. Let's kick off the show proper now. It's time for TVOD. 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 If you're a new listener to the show and you wonder what TVOD is, it started off as a section where we just asked Whitecaps players players in general, what they were watching basically on TV, on Netflix, what they were kind of filling their time with. So I decided to kind of expand it a little bit. We'll still have those kind of chats, but I want to expand it to delve into some football documentaries that's out there on the streaming services, some football films, past and present. And we're going to sit down, we're going to have watched them, then we're going to dig a little bit into it in the show. Hopefully encourage you to possibly check the shows out as well. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at a 4-part BBC documentary that aired in September last year on BBC and then moved on to Amazon Prime, I believe around the world, in October last year. I only got a chance to watch it over the Christmas period and catch up with that. Mentioned it to Zach as well, and Zach's taking it in as well. It's called Fever Pitch, The Rise of the Premier League. So it's available on Amazon Prime in Canada. And basically what the documentary is about, as the name suggests, it's the rise of the English Premier League. From when it was formed in 1992, the formative years of it, basically through the 90s, up to the 1999 and 2000 series. It's a 4-part show. Episode 1 looked at how the Premier League was formed in 1992. For anyone that is unaware, basically, the teams wanted more power, more say. So all the teams resigned at the end of that 91-92 season in May. It was a controversial breakaway. They threatened to just walk away from English football altogether, set up their own league, break away from the Football League altogether, and just be an independent entity. Now, for me, Zach, that's not really much different to these Super League plans that we were hearing about last year, that all these teams were against because there was only 6 English teams allowed and not all 20 as was involved in this breakaway.
Yeah, it definitely had that sort of vibe to it, right? Like that they were doing something that was looking out for their own interests and maybe potentially not the best interest of English football as a whole, in the same way that the teams that were involved with the European Super League attempt were doing likewise, looking out for themselves and maybe not European football as best as a whole. I totally got those vibes as I was rewatching that, and I knew it was the big clubs that were pushing for it, because it happened right before I was getting into football. I started getting football in 93, 94, but that's when I started, I think, watching Soccer Saturday with Graham Leggett.
Heard about that so much from people.
Yeah, it was definitely there was this similarity or this parallel.
I don't actually remember too much about the Premier League when it was actually switched over. I knew I was actually, and I'm trying to remember the years. I think I was in England during the Christmas break in 91 and 92. But I don't it never really came up. I was actually our temple, they had a function in the Christmas season, and it was in Coventry.
Oh,
and
yeah, you mentioned about that.
Yeah, so we were around Coventry, so we really weren't exposed that much to the Premier League, and I was just getting into it. The thing that really brought me into and actually the reason why I chose the team that I chose to support was the Eric Cantona. Basically his kick at the West Ham. I think it was West
Palace.
Ham.
No, Crystal Palace. Yeah.
Crystal Palace. Yeah. So the Crystal Palace game, that was the one where I actually started paying attention a little bit. I don't know why. The kind of the dark side of myself, getting interested in something when somebody gets kicked in the chest or whatever.
I mean, that incident is covered in episode 2 of the show. Episode 1's pretty much just about the formation, the first couple of seasons. Episode 2 then looks at Blackburn's win, which was fueled by money. So again, you look at the Premier League today and Man City walk away with it and it's fueled by money. Back then, you had Jack Warner, who's, I think he was worth something like £360 million, I read. And he just splashed the cash, and Blackburn, everyone's like, oh, plucky underdogs, Blackburn winning the Premier League. And then you kind of see in episode 3 their decline once the money dried up and the success dried up, and then they just plummeted and fell like a stone. But episode 2, it featured a lot on that Cantona episode, that Kung Fu Kick. And I remember that happening and watching the highlights midweek on BBC One. It was like Match of the Day highlights, and just the controversy at the time. And he faced jail time, and then it was a racial slur that was mentioned to him. And there's going to be a lot of people listening to this that either are unaware completely of that incident, or they just have a very vague memory of it. But it was front page news in the UK at that time.
What really intrigued me, it wasn't even the kick. It was the quote he did afterwards. And
the seagulls.
Seagulls, yeah, the seagulls.
Troll.
That was after he was found not guilty or cleared in the courts,
Yeah, exactly. So like the seagulls, I was interested a little bit. Then when he came out, and I actually at that point I was following the whole story and everything like that. And after he got later cleared and everything, that comment was like, I like this guy.
It was about the seagulls follow the trawler, and then he just sat down. Everyone wanted to wait to see what he said, and then he said that.
Yeah, and then he just walked away, and I was like, this guy is interesting. It's when the seagulls follow the trawler, it is because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. That's the comment. I think he did. That's where I found. Yeah.
For me, I've told you guys lots. I have a strong dislike for Manchester United, but it actually stems from the end of the documentary, which they obviously held out to them because they wanted to show the rise of the Premier League leading to a Champions League victory.
Yeah,
so that's where,
yes,
that's where my strong dislike for Manchester United was, is birthed in, or where it formed. But in those earlier days, I didn't love Manchester United, but I really enjoyed watching Eric Cantona play. And it wasn't the fact that he kicked someone or whatever, but it was more so he was a player with like style, like the whole flipping up the collar thing.
Yeah,
and whatever. Like he was and I don't even know. I remember hearing the comments and stuff, and they didn't resonate totally with me at that when I was younger. But it was his style on the field. Like he was a player with style, and he was like someone who you knew wasn't going to take anything from anyone, and not in like a Roy Keane dirty going to kick you in the back of the leg kind of way. But yeah, and then he was just such quality. Like he has a couple of goals, where he would like chip the keeper from outside the box, like with like not like a breakaway with like a whole bunch of people around him. He would just chip the keeper, and he was like, yeah, he's a quality footballer. But
quality, so much talent, charismatic, and you look around the game today, and you're like, there's not a lot of players that's got that kind of charisma. There's so many folk interviewed in this series, like Vinnie Jones, like love him or hate him for how he played. He was a character, and the game seems to have lost a lot of these characters these days, Steve.
Yeah, and for me, like it's the teams that I have followed in other sports too. There's always been like one player that I enjoyed watching, and then once that player left, I just kept watching that team. So it was always one player. In football, it was a quarterback named Don Mikowski. It was nicknamed the Magic Man. For the Bruins, it was Cam Neely, and for Man United, it was Eric Cantona. So it was like always one player that got me intrigued in the team, and then once that happened, then I was basically into the team.
I mean, there's certain players at certain clubs, like at West Ham, Paolo Di Canio. Now, we won't go into all the other side of Paolo Di Canio, but as a player, he just had that charisma as well. Like Roy Keane. I mean, shows it on punditry now. And Graham Souness, and I'm picking all these hard tackler nutcases, I think, which is not what I meant to do as well, but I mean, the other two episodes, episode 3, it focuses on kind of Blackburn's decline, the rise of the celebrity footballer, because it's the class of 92 coming through. And obviously, there's a lot of Man United stuff in this documentary, because during the 90s and the early years of the Premier League, Man United did dominate so much in that league. But that class of 92, again, love them or loathe them, the likes of Beckham, like they were a different class. Young guys that came through homegrown, they didn't go and buy them from other clubs that had developed them.
the real thing about them though, Michael, was the fact that it was a class, like it was a whole group of them.
Yeah.
It wasn't just one or two players. It was like 5 to 7 players, right?
It's what I think you dreamed of the Whitecaps in that 2012 team.
Yeah.
Of what that team would be for the Whitecaps.
Yeah, that's true. For me, the most interesting thing was because I didn't know all the background to it, but I've always had some friends who like Newcastle, and so the most interesting part of the documentary was the backstory of Keith Gillespie, because I didn't know about all his gambling issues and whatever. And I remember when he went to Newcastle and was like really quality, and I always appreciated him. Also because he's from Northern Ireland, right?
Yeah.
So he always, I think, kind of drew those, or at least a little bit drew those. You know, he's Northern Ireland, Manchester United, kind of winger, kind of like the George Best kind of comparisons. And so, I always remember him playing so well for Newcastle, and then wondering why he couldn't kind of kick on or like go to that next level. And I didn't know that there was all this huge stuff happening behind the scenes in his life.
Well, I knew bits of it, and I'd seen a documentary about gambling and football and the effect it had, and he was obviously in that along with the likes of Paul Merson and people like that. But yeah, that's featured in episode 3 as well. It's sad, really, because this was a young guy taken away from his home because of his talent. Then all of a sudden he's got fame, the spotlight, and a wad of money just thrown at him. And it's like, what do you do with that? You've got time to kill. And I think the saddest part of it, without giving too much away from folk watching the documentary, was he'd never been to a bookmaker's. No. And a player had said, oh, do you want to just come with me, keep me company? And then he was hooked. Well,
didn't he sort of say it was like what they all did? They all went together.
Yeah.
They would all go together and put it like 5 down.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like before it was all outlawed, like at East Fife's ground, there was a bookmaker's right across the road. And in the hour before kickoff, all the East Fife players were in there putting their bets on and putting their bets on the football for the day and stuff like that, because you were allowed to do that back in the 90s. It wasn't something that was frowned upon. And like gambling is such a big thing in the UK, and it's such a problem in the UK. And the other good thing in episode 3 in Newcastle wise though is it features that famous Kevin Keegan meltdown.
Yeah.
Which is, it never gets tired of seeing that.
Is it a meltdown though? Didn't he say anything? It wasn't a meltdown. It was just.
Well, he was passionate and angry about, I would love it. I'd love it if we beat them. And he got parodied and pilloried so much for it that it's now thought of that he had a meltdown because he couldn't handle the pressure. I thought it was just anger. Because, it was anger because Ferguson knew what he was doing. Yeah. And then the last episode, it's the rise of Arsene Wenger, Arsenal, the foreign player influx into the league, and Sky trying to buy Man United.
Oh, yeah. I didn't really know. I don't really remember that.
I only actually had vague memories of it. I didn't know it had gone as far as it did. But of course, it all worked out well because they got the Glazers instead. Maybe they should have settled with Murdoch and Sky. At least they'd been on TV all the time.
The Sky thing wasn't allowed to happen because they were worried it was basically creating like a monopoly?
Yeah, monopoly commission. Yeah. Basically, you've got the team. You've got one team owned by the broadcasting company that has the rights to all of Sky, all of the Premier League at that time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's a fascinating documentary. Highly recommend it. 4 episodes, an hour each on Amazon Prime. I mean, Zach, you are not a big fan of the Premier League, but what did you make of it?
No, yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Premier League because I personally prefer German football. But the thing is, I think the thing that made it more enjoyable for me was the fact that that's when I was first watching football on TV, and I was watching those games on Soccer Saturday. So it was an era that I'm more familiar with than I am definitely in the current era. So yeah, I mean, if you like the Premier League, I think you'll really enjoy this.
I think it's a much more enjoyable era as well.
Yes,
because there was more competition.
Yeah,
and there was so many close title races.
Yeah, and it's just like an interesting part of the history of the growth is maybe not the best word, but the changes in club football, right? Yeah. Like you see...
Well, the growth of modern football, I think, is a fair way of describing it. And Steve, I know you've not had a chance to watch all of it yet, but you mentioned you'd enjoyed the couple of episodes that you saw.
I did. There were good moments in here and there. I've always enjoyed, like, even if it's a subject I don't enjoy currently, I'll always enjoy like the creation of something. It's always because there's always interesting backstories that you didn't realize what was going on.
They needed more Jurgen Klinsmann.
Nobody needs more Jurgen Klinsmann.
America wish they had Jurgen Klinsmann.
But that was this episode's TVOD.
TVOD. I don't need a TV screen. I just stick the aerial into my skin and let the signal run through my veins. TVOD.
We'll kick off the show with that. Not every week. Got to give these guys a chance to watch some of the things. There's a good... Well, I think good. I haven't watched it yet. There's a good sounding film on Netflix called Ultras that I think we might maybe want to have a delve into next.
That's the Italian one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched that.
Oh, excellent. I will try and watch that this week. We can cover that the next time. But let's an international flavour. Let's move on to the current football chat now. And in the rest of this part, we're going to turn our attention to the Canadian national team and what was a fantastic window. 9 points from 9. It couldn't have gone much better from a Canadian perspective unless they'd actually clinched a berth in Qatar, which officially 2 points away, basically 1 point away because of the goal difference they've got. They'd have to be a massive swing. But realistically, they are in. They are heading to Qatar. That third win, we talked about the first two on the last show. The third win on Wednesday night, 2-0 over El Salvador. It wasn't a gripping game from my point of view. I didn't think. I had it muted and I was watching AEW at the same time just because it saved me listening to the commentary as well. And I thought it was going to be a formality. But they were made to work hard. Full credit to El Salvador. Tiba Hutchison with the first goal. Didn't know too much about it. And then Jonathan David
got back.
Jonathan David with a fantastic individual second goal. I mean, that
unbelievable.
That was just the picking off the ball, the running, the cut, the lob. Well,
if it wasn't for Alfonso's goal against Panama, I think people would be talking about this as maybe the goal or one of the goals for Canada of the qualifying.
Yeah, that's where we're at now, Steve. There's so many quality goals that you're like, whoa, where do you rank these? Because you've got Sam's from the other night as well, and like Lawrence had a couple, and it's like so many now.
I'm looking at the Atiba Hutchinson goal, and I think it hit went off the lower back at this point, and so I want to label this the tramp goal. Because the thing is, yes, it was a lucky goal, but the fact that you have a 39-year-old running like the length of the field almost to get to there, and you have to be lucky to be good and good to be lucky, and I think this is the case here. The Jonathan David one was just a poor throw in by El Salvador, and you can't do that when you have a world-class striker on the verge of post.
But if you go back and you go back and watch it, like you can see. Because I know the camera on the camera switched, and so you couldn't see the actual interception. But even if you go before that, like when they win the throw-in, you can see him recognize, and you see him start to move towards that defender to like, in case they pass it there. And so, yes, you're right. It was not a good throw-in from El Salvador, but it's an incredible individual effort.
For sure.
It was like a goal my son would score in FIFA. Where you break past the defender, you go in all alone, and you chip the keeper.
Yeah,
and that's interesting because the goal that Hutchinson got, it was like a glitch in FIFA.
Yeah, I heard some people calling it that.
Yes, I mean
it was. I mean, Steve, I don't know about you, but I thought that was proper place, proper time.
Yeah, that's it.
If you're not there, you can't finish those chances.
You can't tramp it.
Yes. We spoke about this in the last show, and obviously, Zach, you just called in for a little bit because you were in Hamilton. But you look at that front three, putting Fonzie in there, like Fonzie, Larin, David, and there's not many teams in the world that have a front three like that. Not hyperbole, not Canadian tinted glasses here. That is 3 world-class forwards that you can have on the pitch.
Well, I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you. You're right. And it's helpful because they're not all identical, right? They're not all the same type of player. They all have different qualities and can play in different positions and are flexible for different formations, and can all play together, which is great as well. I think, though, the thing for me that is the most encouraging about this qualifying, the 11 game unbeaten or the 17 game altogether unbeaten run or whatever, is just how we've seen we have so many options at so many different positions that it's like the confidence has just grown so much, and it's hard not to give a significant amount of that credit for that to, yes, the players working hard and developing and playing at their clubs and all that kind of stuff, but to John Herdman and the coaching staff, and all the people for encouraging and building up and lifting up these players to enable them to unleash their best performances, right? I mean, a lot of football, I remember back to the Swangard days, right? As I got to know footballers back in the Swangard day, you came to understand pretty quickly that they are a big part of it is emotional and mental, and the encouragement and the mental side of the game and being in the right place and having the right amount of confidence is so crucial. And it just feels like this coaching staff has created the culture and created just like an environment for these players to perform to their best level possible. And it just has us all wondering, how much more can they do this? What is their ceiling? Because I mean, as a long-serving Canadian supporter, right now it feels like the ceiling could be very high, even though that might not be truth in reality, right?
Well, the thing is, Steve, when John Herdman got the job, there was a lot of folk kind of poo-pooed him getting the job and said, oh, his style isn't going to work in the men's game, etc., etc. But I think any of the players that didn't feel that he was the one or didn't want that style, I don't think they're involved in the squads anymore.
Seems like it, maybe, yeah. I the thing is football, no matter what level you play it at. It's how you. The thing is the thing that the men's national team needed was basically belief, and they seemed like they had the talent. They had the talent, and you can see the parallels from what he did with the women's team after the failure at the World Cup to what they went to, and then and what they've done here. And it seems like that was actually more believable what he did with the women's team. What he's done with the men's team is just like another world. Another dimension, whatever you want to call it. It's just not. I never imagined them to be in this position at this point. And that's the thing that right now they're at the top of the CONCACAF with 3 games to go. All the records that they were spouting off on the post-game show, like the first team ever to win 6 in a row in a World Cup qualifying part, in the final stage in CONCACAF. All these things about the only team to ever get points in US and Mexico and stuff like that. It's hard to put into words, and I would not have believed this even 2-3 years ago. That we would be in this position. Forget 2-3 years ago. Prior to this qualifying window, I would not have believed it.
I mean, I think we all thought, they've got a great chance of getting through this, but they've made it look easy at times, and I just have this belief in the team. It's like I had no doubt at all they were going to go to El Salvador and come away with the win in this one. No matter who's on the pitch, you feel they're going to do it. And John Herdman does deserve a lot of credit. And you speak to all the players and they talk about how it's a band of brothers and they're all in this together. And it's amazing to see. The thing now, Zach, is Canada, when the next FIFA rankings come out, they're going to be at 33rd. Looking at who's qualified for the World Cup and who might get there, I can't remember who put this out. I saw this on Twitter this morning, that Canada need to be ranked 30th, which is very doable in the next few months, to be put into pot 3 at the World Cup.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a big, big boost for them then as well.
Isn't it crazy, Steve? We're talking about which pot we're going to be in at a World Cup draw.
Feels like we're
how high?
a smoking pot instead of like more believable at the World Cup than being.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been hearing that too. Yeah, and I saw the live FIFA rankings has them 33rd, which is again awesome. I really hope we do get in pot C, because obviously that means potentially better setup. Although
I think it also means Scotland and Canada won't meet until the final, so that'd be good.
Are you pot C?
I think we will be pot C if we get. Again, still holding out for this Russian invasion, but pot C is looking good.
So yeah, everyone's Canada to get up into pot C at least, right? But also, I think everyone's also hoping that we get drawn into Group A with Qatar.
Oh no! Tell you, Qatar are not a bad team.
Yeah, but are they as good as the other 7 top-seeded teams?
But the other 7 top-seeded teams going to be used to playing in those conditions and everything that goes with it. And they don't have a home field advantage. Every single team, even South Africa, who were one of the weakest hosts in recent years, got that home crowd bump to an extent.
Yeah, I would still prefer that.
The March window is going to wrap things up in World Cup qualifying. Then you've got a June window, which is going to be the CONCACAF Nations League, and we'll come to that next. Then there's just one more prep window, international window, which is in September, but they're only allowed to play 2 matches in that window. In those 2 games, I feel they need real testing. I think they need to go to Europe. They need to play 2 of the top teams over in Europe just to get fully prepared for what is to come.
Imagine like we talk like obviously we're not bringing this up, but the Honduras game, people had hypothermia there. How many people are going to have like heat exhaustion or like heat stroke or whatever from that playing there? Genuinely,
the FIFA need to have minimum and maximum temperature conditions that games can be played in, because to start a game that was minus 16 Celsius, that felt like minus 27, and then a couple of players get hypothermia, absolutely ridiculous. And folk were like, oh, well, you didn't say that when it was played in Hamilton and Edmonton. I did. I said that isn't good conditions for playing football.
Well,
and
Hamilton
it also wasn't minus 16.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Hamilton was fine because it was the afternoon. Like it was nice. It was very nice in Hamilton. But I took off my big winter jacket and I was
But
great.
I thought Edmonton was not that bad though either.
No, Edmonton wasn't bad either.
Yeah, it was just snow.
I took off my winter jacket at that too.
It wasn't minus 16 feeling like minus 27. It was ridiculous. But then they should have minimum and maximum conditions. And that counts for like humidity and everything like that as well. Because some of these conditions, and the amount of games that these footballers are playing and the strains and stresses on them, there's going to be a serious injury, possibly even a fatality at one of these games.
You know, John Herdman's coaching staff is fantastic, but I don't really see any World Cup type experience. Do you think Canada should hire some kind of advisory, like coach or something like that, to help with that kind of setup and experience and going into a tournament like that?
I don't think it would do any harm, because like these guys haven't been in that kind of environment.
Yeah, or do you want to like not avoid that because that could be stepping on John Herdman's toes? That's what I was wondering that at one point.
No, I mean if the person that they hire, if their role is to like help with the prep and everything like that, as to what to expect, I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think that would be advised, because right now he's done really well in setting up these tournaments. Obviously, he's played in women's World Cups and that, so he's got that experience. But
yeah, he's got that.
But the men's World Cup is a little bit different, obviously, because it is more attended and it's busier. It's probably more packed and everything like that. So it might have a different feel. So I don't know. It was just something that popped in my head.
And of course, who knows? I mean, we keeping our fingers crossed that we will have Fonzie at the World Cup, but it was just mentioned this week that he could be out till April, Zach, which from a Canadian Bayern Munich perspective, football-wise, is obviously not ideal, but from a personal point of view and Fonzie's health, they're taking their time, which is good, but also a little concerning when it was mild to start with and now it could be out till maybe at least April.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually, no matter where things are at, I think it's not so bad if he doesn't play in these last 3 qualifiers for Canada.
Yeah,
because in one sense he's not needed, and in another sense, no matter where he's at in his recovery or his ability to play, he doesn't need, like, it would be nice for him not to have to play those 3 games in 7 days again. So I think I'm pretty sure that Herdman and his staff are planning those games without Alfonso in their thoughts and in their approach. And then it's also good, I think, for Canada, as we've seen without him in this window, we've seen other players rise to the occasion. Maybe none more so than Sam Adekubi. So, and it also mean if he's not there, and Sam's suspended for the first game, for Whitecaps fans, it'll mean it's likely that if he's fit and ready to go, Christian Gutierrez could start that first game against Costa Rica.
Yeah, it'd be excellent.
But yeah, hopefully Fonzie gets well and he's good to go, and he's his next season in the Bundesliga, he's all fit and all in form, so that in November he's ready to roll.
Do you guys think that we'll see any new players in this next window at all?
Oh, you mean like the guys choosing to play for Canada now?
Yeah,
it'd be worth bringing a couple in, especially if we can wrap up the points. That third game in Panama might not be worth much anyway. Although I'm pretty sure John Herdman's gonna, if they're unbeaten going into that, he's gonna want 100% record to come out the competition. Not 100%, but unbeaten.
Yeah, of course it wouldn't be unbeaten. But who are the 2 guys? Flores is the one. Who's the other? Oh, Jebison.
Jebison. There's also Stefan Mitrovic, who's a Serbian.
Right.
He would be interesting because he's a kind of like a number 10 attacking midfield type. So he'd be interesting to have.
We could also see them because they have announced the CONCACAF Nations League for 2022-23 today. So there's
that's a good point.
They're going to be playing that in June. There's 4 games in June, so 4 proper competitive games. Canada will be in a group of 4. They'll be playing 4 games between June 2nd and 14th. The draw is going to take place in April, and then the remaining 2 games is going to be, I think, next March, and then you've got the finals in June next year as well. So there's a chance certainly to cap-tie folk in that, have a look at guys, maybe rest some of the European guys that have going to have had very, very busy seasons, obviously. So, I mean, in a way, that's good. In a way, it's kind of 4 games that, depending on who you get in the group, it might be not the most testing games, which I don't think is ideal heading into a World Cup.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what their approach is for that. One of the things, well, I don't know if you, I heard that on the Brazil qualifiers, that the Brazilian TV people were talking that, they're booking a friendly with Canada this summer.
Oh.
So I don't know how true that is or not, but it'll be interesting.
Hey, that's a BC place. I'm happy with that.
There's I mean, this is not your father's Brazil, right? Or whatever.
It's not even my childhood's Brazil.
That's true. Same for me.
Socrates.
No, I kind of hope they'll do. One of the things I like about Germany is Germany. What Germany does in their preparation for the World Cup is they'll usually their last 3 games, and two of the games are against opponents from the part of the world who play the kind of football that their opponents will be in their group stage.
Yeah, England actually do that as well.
But their last game, virtually always, their last game before a World Cup is against someone, and they go out and smash them. And it's it just builds the players' confidence. They usually score no less than 7 goals. and it just like I can't remember how long that they've been doing it, but it's been like many World Cups. If you go back and look, their last game is against like Estonia or Faroe Islands or something, and they just crush them, and it gets all like the chemistry of the players and all that going, and I would like to see Canada maybe try and do something like that, maybe, but maybe Herdman will think that might not be good for the psyche.
Well, hopefully we can put those questions to John Herdman. I am trying to get him on our 500th episode that's coming up in 2 shows' time. So keep our fingers crossed that we can get him onto that. And John, if you do still listen to the show, get in touch. We'd love to have you on. But that is it for our Canada chat. We are going to be turning our attention to the Whitecaps next. And we'll be back with that after this.
Hey, I am Axel Schuster, and I'm listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
The distant echo of faraway voices boarding faraway trains to take them home to the ones that they love and who love them forever. The grey's dirty steps repeat my own and reflect my thoughts. Cold and uninviting, partially naked, but so far toffee wrappers and the smallest papers. Mr. Jones got run down. Headlines of death and sorrow, they tell of tomorrow. Madmen on the rampage, and I'm down in a Tuesday sort of midnight.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's this month's Artist of the Month here at AFTN. It's a new month, which means new Artist of the Month. And I've gone back to the 70s, of course, because Caitlin thinks I'm stuck in the 70s. And I only listen to 70s music and watch 70s TV shows because I've been working my way through Top of the Pops from 1979. And the other day we're in the car and she's going on about, oh, it's all 70s music and old music. And I was like, Caitlin, will you shut up? I'm trying to listen to John Peel's Festive 50 from 1979 here. So I don't know where she was getting that from. But that was our new Artist of the Month. That was The Jam, one of my all-time favourite bands, and a band that gave AFTN its name. Away from the Numbers was a B-side from a Jam single. That you just heard there was my favourite Jam single. Their second single, taken from their third album, All Mod Cons, released in 1978. It was their sixth single overall, and that was Down in the Tube Station at Midnight. And we'll have another Jam song to kick off the next part. If you enjoyed that, if you enjoy our show, consider donating to CITR Radio's fund drive. It's in full swing at the moment. It kicked off on February the 3rd. It's running until February the 10th. We're proud to be a part of CITR Radio. You can go to citr.ca/donate. Find all the details there. Mention AFTN when you're donating as well. You can donate any amount you want. There's some swag on offer as well, depending on what you donate. And if you donate $101.90, you could be one of the ones that gets a special Valentine's Day's dedication to you on the radio. Next week's show, because it's going to actually come out around Valentine's Day, we're going to be featuring love. It's going to be a love-themed show, guys, and I know that you guys love a lot of things about football. So what I want the listeners to do is tell us why you love football. Why is football the sport that you love so much? We'll give you our reasons in next week's show, and we're also going to hear from several Whitecaps players as well, just about why they love the game of football. Talking of the Whitecaps, so at this part, we're going to be looking at the Whitecaps and the news of the week. There's comings, there's goings, there's not much happening in some areas, there's some things happening in other areas, there's a little bit of clarification on some things and still confusion about others. That's the Whitecaps for you. One thing that we do know though, Theo Bair is now officially no longer a Whitecap. Signed with St Johnstone, we covered it in the last show, signed with them now, until the summer of 2024. Teaming up with Spoonie over there in Perth in Scotland, I think it's a good move. We didn't get your thoughts on it last week, Zach. It's going to be tough for him, but I think his physicality suits the Scottish League really well. He's got a chance to shine there. Wish him all the best. Had a quick chat with him during the week, just had a couple of messages with him, and he's really excited to go over there and get going. I think this could be great for him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out for him, because they're in a relegation battle, right?
Yeah, they won midweek though, so they're not bottom anymore.
I wonder, I think it'll be good for Theo to have that experience of battling to stay up, right? Because he's just had to come off this winning promotion with HemCam, and now he's going to Scotland and he's fighting relegation. So he have quite the experience, I think, and I think it's good for him at his age to go through these type of things. So I think it'll build his character as not only as a person but as a footballer.
Oh yeah, those kind of battles does so much for you.
Totally. So I think this will be a positive move for him. Obviously, out of us, the Scottish League the best, but I think he is the type of player who could make a contribution. I know you guys, I think, talked about how Marcus Haber went there and it wasn't quite a great.
He struggled, but other guys have gone and done well.
But that's the thing, though. He's a much different. Marcus Haber is a big dude, but he doesn't play like a big dude, right? He wants to play more with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, he also had some injuries while he was there as well, and he was never the same when he came back from the injury that he had whilst he was at St Johnstone as well, and he had a bit of a tough time. But I mean, there's a bit of pressure on Theo, and some of the comments I've read is they looked at how many goals he scored for the Whitecaps. It's this guy can't score. We need a guy that scores. So I just hope the fans are patient, because they've got a really good signing there, and they've got a chance to see a really good prospect really come on into his game and find his feet.
I think, like we said before, he's got the size to handle the Premier League, but he's got the speed that you don't see in Scottish football, and that's where the big advantage for him could be to really make a name for himself.
Well, aside from Johnny Russell,
I've watched a couple of players this season that are similar. They're with other teams that are similar to kind of Thea's style, and they've been thriving. So I think he can come in and do the same.
I mean, at least he didn't go to Wraith Rovers.
No, we will come to Wraith Rovers in the next part. But one striker has gone. Another one is hanging around till at least 2025 with a club option until 2026. Brian White on Thursday, his birthday, was announced that he had been extended for 4 more seasons. He's going to get a pay rise as well, which JJ Adams reported is going to take him to around the 400,000 mark, so almost doubling his salary. Now, obviously, it's always a risk to do that when when a player's coming off a really good season. Was it a flash in the pan? Do you reward that? If you don't reward it now and he has another good season, then his worth all of a sudden has gone up even higher, and you might have to pay a little bit more. So I think it was good for the Caps to lock him in.
Or he gets picked off by a Mexican team.
Yes, or that as well. But I think it was good to lock him in. And a bit of stability and belief in Brian as well, I think will be really good for his confidence, Zach.
Yeah, I think this is good for Brian White. I still have his reservations that he'll be able to pick up where he left off last year, although I wouldn't be shocked if I'm proven wrong on that.
Well, yes, also coming back from a bit of some knee issues in the off-season, so if he doesn't come out all guns blazing, then there is that. Wow,
okay. Yeah, I just have recollections as a child. I remember I don't know, it was Kelly Gruber for the Blue Jays, had his big 30 home run year, and then they gave him the big contract, and then he just sucked the next year. Not sucked, but he was really bad. And then I remember seeing that in different sports, multiple times, how a player works really hard, gets the big deal, and then the next year they don't quite hit those high notes again. So I mean, for his sake as a person, I hope that's not what he has to experience.
But like I said, if he matches his goal output that he did in half a year over a full year, I think it's worth it. Yeah. And I think if he does that, then this current money is worth it. And from what I understand, JJ also mentioned that there might be bonuses that if he
there's incentives and goal bonuses, and that's what you want. You want to make him hungry to make more money.
Yeah, exactly. So it could even be more.
Steve, I agree that if he gets, whatever the 12 or whatever goals he got last year in the season, I think that'll be good. I don't think it'll be good enough for like the supporters, though. I think they'll be expecting more than that. The other thing I want to say,
should be, because technically he's the secondary striker to your DP striker.
Well, he wasn't in minutes though, right?
No, but like if you look at that roster, and like your DP striker should be your first choice striker, and then he should be your second choice striker, or that's the two that start in the games. Now, not getting into the whole Cava thing, that's how the supporters should look at it.
But they won't see it that way if the playing time is similar to last year. But that's a whole other conversation. The one thing I do want to say, though, is the $400,000 does not seem like that much.
No, see, at first I thought it was, and then I thought about it, and it's like, you know what? Actually, that isn't. That's a pretty good deal.
I can't remember what the DP threshold is now, but it's close to 6, or is it over 6?
It's either 625 or 725.
Yeah, see,
I lost track. So, I mean, it's way off that, but these incentives will be good for him as well, because it's like, okay, well, we'll give you this, but if you score this, or you score this, and you score this, you can make a lot more money.
Well, one question for you about this, though. Will Axel be referring to this as a new signing?
Probably. What you said, Zach, as well, is in the back of my mind, because at East Fife over the years, we've had so many folk that's been trialists, and they've been amazing for 2 or 3 games. Then as soon as we gave them a contract, they were awful. And we never saw the same. We had one striker in particular, who I can't even remember his name now, but he was great. Scored a couple of goals. We signed him, and I think he scored one more goal for the rest of the season. It was awful, but I'm sure that's not Brian White.
Check the trivia book. Maybe he's in there.
Probably is. One person that will not be a Whitecap, though, this season, unless things dramatically change, is Kwame Awua. I'm starting to think I've got the kiss of death. We interviewed Max.
Wait. You're kissing players now?
Shh, not allowed to. It's unofficial. And there's no hugs. But yeah, we interviewed Max in December. Max is gone. We interviewed Theo Bair 2 episodes ago. Theo's gone. In that same episode, we interviewed Kwame Awua. And Kwame Awua is no longer in the Whitecaps training camp. All I'm saying to David Egbo is, I'm sorry if it happens, because you were the 3rd Whitecaps player we spoke to in that episode. But yeah, he's not going to be continuing his trial with the Whitecaps. Axel has said that he wasn't high enough on the depth chart and the player wants first team football. In some ways, it's a bit of a waste, because Kwame seemed the ideal player for how Vanny wants this team to play. A wing back, great getting forward, couple of great seasons in the CPL, just getting better and better and better. MLS experience, great guy on and off the pitch, and fantastic. From the player's point of view, he needs to be playing. You can't go from being a starter with Forge and a team that's winning championships and being great in CONCACAF football to then being on the bench for half the season or more, because Gooty's your starting left back. Now he could challenge him and take that. Obviously, different formations might mean that Kwame would have been the better option. But Axel did kind of mention that they've also got Javain Brown for there. So really, if they're looking at Brown and Gooty and Christian Dahomey, the wing-back Christian Dahomey, then Kwame, you're talking 3rd or 4th in the depth chart. So in that case, that makes sense.
No, but for me, it doesn't make sense, because if you're coming off the CPL, you have to take a 1-year chance on MLS, unless you there's
but
no
he's
point
had
in going.
2 years in MLS already.
But he's got, now that he's done something in CPL, he's got to do 1 year at MLS. Like, he's got to take that chance, because there's no point of going back to CPL. Now, if he's got another opportunity somewhere else in MLS, that's fine. But he's got to. The amount of injuries that happened with the Whitecaps, like last year was wingback, was like, we were devastated. He was going to get his chance eventually and to impress. So you have to take that risk with as a player. And so I don't agree with it. I think he should have stayed. If he was 4th, if he was told he was 5th or 6th in the depth chart, then definitely that's a different story. But if he was 4th, like you're saying, then he should have stayed. My
But
opinion.
it could maybe have been a money aspect as well, but I mean, we don't know. But Axel said the door's open, so like never say never. But I mean, he's at a stage, Zach, where he does want to be playing week in, week out. Would not be surprised if he ends up possibly maybe Pacific.
Well, yeah, I think you know what, I agree with Steve. Like, I think that it would make sense for him to spend a year at an MLS club where he's going to have to kind of prove himself again at the level.
He'd probably be starting in MLS too.
If he goes back to CPL, I just can't see him getting the money he will in MLS either. So it also feels like not the step forward you would hope.
He seemed to have impressed as well, and everyone that saw him was saying he was doing really well. So I was surprised with that. I thought he was a shoo-in to get a deal, I've got to say. But obviously not. But yeah, one of the players that was mentioned as left back is Javain Brown. We saw him a couple of times there last season. We saw him at right back. He can play centre back as well. We've seen him with Jamaica of his own accord.
Yeah, it seems like his year with the Whitecaps impacted his play for Jamaica.
Yeah, he got an own goal. I wasn't going to mention that, but yeah. So we know a lot of things about Javain Brown. We've learned a lot of things in the last year about him. But one thing we haven't found out until now is, does Javain Brown fancy a chocolate digestive?
Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive, even though it's unsuggested? Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive?
You're sitting at home. You decide that you fancy a hot beverage. What would be your hot beverage of choice? A tea, a coffee, something else?
I'm not a coffee fan, I would drink a tea.
And what would you have with that? Like, do you have a sweet tooth? Would you have a biscuit, a cookie, some cake, something like that?
Probably a cookie.
What's your favourite go-to cookie?
I like every cookie because I like sweet a lot.
Well, you're like me, so that's good. I've got a really sweet tooth, and hopefully you're not going to be like me and have huge dental bills, but are you a dunker?
No.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Javain.
Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive? Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive? Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive, even though it's unsuggested? Anyone fancy a chocolate digestive?
So Javain Brown there, he's got a sweet tooth. Not fancying a chocolate digestive, but give him all the sweet treats you can. So the club are heading off to San Diego on Saturday for an 11-day camp in which they'll play 4 games. Only one of the draft picks is heading down to the camp, and surprisingly, it is not first-round pick Simon Beecher, but it's the 3rd pick overall, 2nd in the 2nd round that was taken, American midfielder Giovanni Aguilar. He's going down with him. The rest is going to train with the MLS 2 team. So, I mean, that's a little bit of a surprise, but they've obviously liked what they've seen from him at training, so that's good. Goalkeeping situation. They hope to add another goalkeeper whilst they're in San Diego, but there's not a guarantee that they'll be able to get that done over the next kind of 2 weeks. I am hearing, though, that Isaac Boehmer is going to now re-sign an MLS deal and is going to be in as the 3rd keeper. And then they're just looking for somebody that is happy to be challenging Thomas, but knows that they're coming there as a number 2. So hopefully sooner rather than later. And it's going to be a domestic as well, because they're obviously not going to waste an international spot on a keeper that's not going to be playing very much. But the draft pick situation is certainly interesting.
I think it's more to do with the depth there, maybe that they wanted Beecher to be playing. I guess he's training with the MLS 2 side.
Yeah.
So it's probably that. Maybe they, because of some players missing or whatever, they thought Aguilar would be good depth and everything. And I think he is a little bit older. I could be wrong on that. He is a little bit more of a veteran guy coming out of college, so it might be a better option for there.
There will be, though, one new midfielder in camp in San Diego. News was broken on Thursday by our good friend Harjeet Jahal, who got the big breaking story. Not content with having Canadian head coach John Herdman's son in the Whitecaps organisation. Jay Herdman is in the academy and highly thought of, and I have seen him play. and he's some player. He's got a bright future ahead of him. So they've got the American head coach's son now, Greg Berhalter's son, Sebastian Berhalter, is going to be signing for the Whitecaps. It's all set to get announced on Friday. We're recording this on Thursday night, so the time that this comes out, he will be announced. Only for 50,000 in GAM, going to Columbus. There are future considerations depending on appearances and performances and stuff as well. He's a homegrown through the Columbus system. After he came out of college, he signed a homegrown deal with Columbus in 2020, made his debut at the MLS's back tournament, made 9 appearances for the crew in MLS, was then loaned to Austin for their inaugural season last year, made 18 appearances for Verdi. They had a loan with an option to buy, but chose not to buy. Then he went back to Columbus, and now he's gone for 50,000 in GAM. And when the news came out, it hasn't gone down great, Steve. But what's your thoughts on it?
Well, from what I've heard, and this is really through back channels, that this deal was arranged by U.S. Soccer Federation as kind of like a witness protection program before the next window, just in case something went bad. They wanted to get him out of the country. So that's what I've heard. I can't confirm it. I don't have a second source on that,
Wasn't it Klinsmann's son who used to tweet stuff and like everyone would get mad?
Oh yes. Can we get Klinsmann's son as well? Just get all the coaches' sons in.
Essentially, I think it's a good deal for as a depth player, and if worst case scenario he plays for MLS 2 as well, like you'll see him more times there.
Yeah, I would think he will.
So
he's a central midfielder. Like Transfer Market has him mainly as a central midfielder that can play attacking midfielder. You look at his stats though, and you look at some of his performance stats. He seems more like a defensive midfielder as like a replacement for Bikel as a number 6.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's only 22, I believe, right? He's only 20 years old, so he's still young. He's not like a veteran or anything like that.
Well, it's not like Vancouver's going to need any help in central midfield, are they?
Well, but we'll come to that shortly because that was something else in Har's article. But there's been a lot of blowback as why are we signing an American? Why are we not signing a Canadian player? There's surely Canadian talent out there. And to be honest, there's probably better players in the CPL than from what we've seen from Berhalter so far. Caleb Wilkins did a really good breakdown on 86 Forever, though, of Berhalter. And looking at his stats, looking at his figures, he seems good at moving the ball forward, at breaking up plays, putting in defensive shifts. Some of the figures that he put up for Austin would have led on the Whitecaps team. Offensively, there's just not much input or output from him. It's like there's no assists, there's no goals from him. But he seems a guy that might be what Vanny is looking for, is the guy that kind of sits back a little bit.
And he's an American player at this point. Maybe they just didn't want to rush anybody out of their academy to fill those spots, and they can easily flip him to another team down the road because other American MLS teams probably will need domestic players in the future.
Yeah,
and
I mean, if he does well, I'm sure they can flip him.
All our Canadian players are too good to play in MLS. They got to go to Europe.
There was a tweet I got from Flagstaff Kid at Tura Kid on Twitter, Zach. It says, it's a joke that a team across the aisle won the CPL Championship comprised of almost a majority of ex-Whitecaps Academy players, standouts too, and beat the Caps convincingly. 2 players got tryouts with TFC, 1 signed, didn't get a sniff with the MLS club across the streets. Something's amiss.
Yeah, but I think that might be a two-way street thing, right? I think it might be the Whitecaps not wanting to bring back players, maybe to show that they gave up on them too early or whatever. And it might be the players who don't want to come back because it wasn't maybe the most memorable time in their footballing journey, and they've moved on to other things, right?
Also, it should be said that the 2 that went to TFC is Lucas McNaughton, a centre-back, and Caden Chung, a full-back. And that's not positions that we were needing to kind of look at right now. I mean, it's good. It's a good depth signing. And I'll keep my my thoughts open on him till I see him play a little bit more. I mean, I saw him play a little bit with Austin. He wasn't somebody that stood out. He's been capped with the US at under 17 level.
Shocking.
I mean, obviously, this is setting up. Toronto's got Bradley and Bradley. This is setting us up in the future for Berhalter and Berhalter, surely. But talking of midfielders, there was another little interesting tidbit in Har's article. Har spoke to Axel on Thursday and spoke to him about Caio Alexandre and why he's not in camp and stuff. And it turns out that good old Whitecaps chestnut of visa issues is the reason. Now, according to Axel in this article, Caio had a work permit for working and playing in the US last year. Then he got injured when they were down in Utah. So the club hadn't applied for a Canadian work permit for him. They applied in October to get that work permit because he had this season-ending injury. And as of right now, it hasn't come through yet. I do find this baffling as why you wouldn't have applied for both at the same time. I've got to say, and even if you hadn't, why would you have waited as late as October, knowing the issues we've had with visas over the years?
Hopefully there's a good reason for this, Michael.
Yeah, I hope there is as well. That's not forthcoming in that article.
You can only apply so much time ahead or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But regardless, it does not look good. At
least they can play in the US by the looks of it. So that's the opposite of Ali Adnan. A couple of other little tidbits from this week that's come out. The MLS Next Pro roster rules were announced this week by MLS. Whitecaps' second team in this league can have a 35-man roster.
What?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
24 signed professionals and 11 amateurs can be on.
You're gonna get on the team.
I think Steve, we should get along at the next Whitecaps media match. We've got a shot. They're looking for goalkeepers, man. You're in with a shout. But 7 international spots on these rosters as well, and they can be traded. Which you would imagine the Whitecaps are going to trade a lot of those, since I would imagine it's going to be a pretty domestic heavy roster here. But I mean, who knows? They might bring over tons of Scots just to appease me.
I want them to trade one till 2099.
You're hopeful that league's going to exist till 2099?
I just want to see that trade. I just want to like the Sandy Niasi trade. I just want to see that on Wikipedia, that 2099.
I mean, I like the size of the roster in one regard, and the Whitecaps can have a look at tons of guys and just try folk out, try all these draft picks out, see what it looks like when they're playing at a pro level. They can get some amateur guys up. They can bring players in from the first team into it as well. Play a little bit of audio now, just from Vanni Sartini. I asked him during the week when this was announced, just for his thoughts on it and how he plans to kind of use the MLS Pro team in the grand scheme of things with the Whitecaps. Here's what he had to say. It was just announced a little bit of the roster makeup, how you can have up to 24 senior professionals and 11 amateurs on it. How do you envisage that squad playing out for you this season? Do you see it filling out with a lot of just the guys that you already know, or are you going to use it as a chance to bring guys in that you want to have a look at?
Well, no, I would say both. It's going to be mostly, for me, a place where our best guys of the academy go there and play, because that's, for me, the entire reason of that team, to see and to give a platform for the very interesting players that are young and good, but maybe they're not good enough at the moment to trust them in MLS to see if they can compete at good level. And now maybe you can have the choice to bring them in the first team is going to be much more educated instead of just a guess. So I see that, but I also see as a team where maybe in some specific situation we can use that team to put game fitness to to players that have been out for some times. They come back from an injury. Give you an example. When Caio will join us back, I think that I will use a little bit the Next Pro to have him have game fitness and be back with us, because if not, it's going to be really hard for someone to get back and compete for the spot in the first team.
I was going to ask about that as well, because the press release about it didn't really mention too much about like movement between the MLS team and this team. So if someone's got an MLS contract, they can easily go and play for the other team, no problem.
I have to be honest, that's a question for the club in terms of rules and everything. But I think that you can do like you were doing in the old USL day, that you can do that short loan for a week or something to the other team and then bring him back.
So Vanni Sartini there just chatting about MLS Next Pro. There's still so many things we don't know, like the schedule and how many games there's going to be and where the games are going to be played and all this kind of stuff. So it's still getting sorted out. We also don't know who the head coach is going to be officially for the Whitecaps, but we talked about this last time out and I cut it out and ended up putting it in the show, but it's Nick Dazovic. He's going to be named the under-23 head coach. That should be announced soon, and we'll have a chat with him about that. One thing I do want to ask, just to end this, and just to be serious about it, we spoke about this. Mo Farsi went to Columbus's second team. We've talked about the pathway that you're in an MLS setup. You've got a pathway to MLS team. You've got more eyes on you. But now that we know how big these rosters can be, and the understanding is there's not a salary cap, so money may not be an issue as well for some of these teams as well. Zach, how hard could this hit CPL? Maybe not this year, but next year onwards? Do you think CPL would still be a favoured option for Canadian players? Or do you think they might think, well, there's all these international roster spots, teams might want it, I'm going to go, pathway, more money?
I think it can have an impact because you're right. Yeah, there is a potential pathway to MLS first teams. I think the biggest thing will be the money and how much players want to, how much players feel that they need to make as much as they can right away, as opposed to because I think around the world, I think playing in the CPL, I think will have a higher, will be seen as a higher league as it should be than MLS Next Pro.
I think there's more eyeballs on it as well because One Soccer's and CPL's got deals worldwide at the moment, and we don't know what's happening with MLS 2 broadcasting at the moment.
So in that sense, I think it's like a better platform for you for your career. But I think you're right. There's a chance, a high probability that you could make more money playing for MLS Next Pro. I think that the ambitious player still looks to Europe, not MLS, as where they want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that CPL has been a way to do that, and hopefully will be more and more a way to do that. And so I hope that Canada's best young players will choose the CPL over something like MLS Next Pro or USL.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, what would be if a young player was to come to you and say, what should I do? Should I stay in the CPL? Should I look to go to the lower leagues of Europe? Should I look to go to an MLS 2 team and have that pathway? What would your advice be?
I would say that for me, I personally don't think it has that much of an impact because I think the Whitecaps are going to be playing a lot of their academy players initially. I don't think they're going to bring in players from outside. But
other teams might. I mean, you've already seen Farsi go.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing is for me is that you got to get playing time. Again, I mentioned Owusu from before. If he was going to be playing, if they said you're going to be an MLS 2 player, then fine, go back to CPL. But if you left because you were, the bottom, like the fourth person on the depth chart for fullbacks, then you should have stayed there. So for me, it's better to be in the CPL than MLS 2 at this point. I think that is probably because you get more eyes on you You get more playing time, especially if you're young. If you're like 26 or 27, maybe you do want to go to MLS2 because maybe there is a little bit more money. But if you're 22, 23, 21, I think CPL is better personally.
The other thing as well with all of this is if you've got 35-man rosters or even 24-man rosters, how much game time are some of these guys going to get? Because we saw it before with WFC2. It's like...
I'm wondering if some of the players that are going to be like part of this 35, are they MLS players? Like, do they have
I'd
to register?
imagine that could be because like Vanny spoke and like in his talk there, I mean, he mentioned that Kyle is a guy that when he eventually comes, he's going to need to get match fit. So how do you do that in MLS2 is the way that he's probably going to do it.
Maybe they keep 10 roster spots open for MLS players. Maybe, I don't know if they can rotate them in and out of those spots or something like that. And then you got the rest of the 25 spots as regulars. And I think that's going to be a lot of academy type players. Or people
when we speak to Dasso, we can ask him all these things and hopefully they've got some answers.
Well, I think that's what they're going to have to do is, right, you'll keep slots open on the roster so that you can bring in players who are recovering from injury and all that kind of stuff. That's the only thing that would make sense.
And I think
the only reason why you have it so big.
And I think that's a good way to do it because then you're not then you're able to not just flood the MLS2 team with all MLS players. You keep a limit to it.
Yeah. But that is it for our Whitecaps chat. We've got one more part to go. We're going to be travelling around the world, bringing you news from all over. And we'll be back with that after this.
Hi, I'm Brian White, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part is another song from our new Artist of the Month here at AFTN for February, English band The Jam. And that was their standalone single from 1978, their fourth single overall. That was News of the World. And I don't know how well known the Jam are over here. They didn't have a lot of hits over here because they wanted to focus more on the UK. Paul Weller is maybe more known for his solo stuff. Never a huge fan of when he went to do the Style Council or his solo stuff. Love the Jam. As I mentioned, that's what AFTN is named after. It is a Jam song. We've got a lot more fun tunes from them to come over the month. And fun is the word of the week, and CITR Radio is having their fund drive at the moment. We've mentioned it earlier in the show. If you want to donate, they're trying to raise $25,000 this year. You can head over to citr.ca/donate. Any amount is welcome. Whatever you donate, just mention you heard about it on AFTN Soccer Show. It asks you for that on the form. They want to just know who's listening to what shows and who loves the station so much. And we know that you love us and that you'll love the station. So any little helps. And yeah, the more you donate, the more swag you can get as well. Find out all the details, citr.ca/donate. But the reason we started this part with News of the World is we're going to be travelling around the world now from the safety of our armchairs without Joe Corona, though. He decided not to travel with us this time. And we're going to start our travels in Canada. So yeah, we're not getting very far at all. We're going to kick off with a little bit of chat about the Canadian Premier League, because we haven't talked about that for a few shows, but been a few things to kind of catch up on. Today, Thursday, February 3rd, the 2022 CPL schedule came out. It's a 28-game season. It's going to run from April the 7th to October 9th, 10th. York host Halifax in the season opener. Mouth-watering start for everyone, that game. I'm sure you'll agree. Okay, maybe not the most exciting start, but Pacific are hosting Forge in their season opener. That is a mouth-watering start. A rematch of last year's championship game. Change to the playoff format. We'll see the semi-finals become two-legged affairs, home and away, on October the 15th and the 22nd. The final will stay a one-legged affair, hosted by the higher seeds, and that will be on October 29th. Yeah, a fan of that one, Zach?
Yes and no. I still am sad that they kind of went away from the, hey, we're going to have a proper table. I really wish they would have kept a proper table with a proper championship and then had their own CPL Cup run congruent with the season or at the end of the season, whatever.
Yeah, but then Pacific would not be champions.
Or maybe they would be. But no, I don't know. I like one-offs. I think one-offs are more enjoyable. Even like
I do as well.
The first season there was the final was home and away too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like one-offs for finals.
I like one-off finals. I like one-off semis. I don't know what you think, Steve. A lot of folk felt it was unfair that teams make the playoffs and then they don't even get a home game out of it. But that's like the MLS. Look at the Whitecaps. They made the playoffs, didn't get a home game out of it. You earn the right for that over the course of the season. If you're going to have playoffs, and I'd rather have a single table, but if you're going to have playoffs, you have to be rewarded what you do over the course of the season. Otherwise, what's the point?
Exactly. Then there's no point. Like if it's everything's up and even and everything like that, there's no point of doing, like in other leagues when you do a series or something like that, like a best of 7. Obviously, you can't do a best of 7 in football, but the home team gets the extra home game when you do a best of 7. So it should be like in when you're having the two games never made sense to me. It's never really done. Like I've always thought that one game is good enough, and the team that's seeded higher should be the one that hosts the team, or you do like the random draw.
I mean, it is what it is. At least, hopefully, we'll get a full normal season. Most games are going to be on the weekend. Only 6 midweek games are scheduled throughout the league this season, which is fantastic news.
Starting with the first one that you talked about.
Yeah, starting with the first one. Pacific's only got one as well, which is also on a Thursday as well. Pacific start off with 3 home games in April. Their season, I haven't looked at all the other teams' fixtures, but games are in chunks, clearly for travel purposes. So it's like 3 home games, and they're away for 3, and then home and away, and it's all in chunks. Only one home game, though, clashes with a Whitecaps home game. So I think that is good in terms of people that do want to go and watch both, working both ways. Like people from the island that have Whitecaps season tickets that are coming over, people from here that have thought, I want to get to a Pacific game, but that one clashes with the Whitecaps or whatever. So only one clash. So I think that is fantastic. Hopefully we can get over to a few more games this year as well. Pacific's games, there's one Thursday home game, which is the day before Canada Day, so it's kind of a weekend feel to it anyway.
Yeah.
3 Friday nights, 6 games on a Saturday, 4 on Sunday, because it's 14 and 14 home and away, 28 game season. Forge come to town on April 10th for the championship game rematch. The day after the Whitecaps, that game is the day after the Whitecaps are hosting the Timbers in MLS action. So I'd hope to maybe make a long weekend of it, but I can't miss the Whitecaps play Timbers in a Cascadia game. So maybe I'll stay for a little bit after it, but I hope to get over for that one on the 10th. What about you, Zach? It's the week before Easter. I know Sundays aren't a great time for you for going to football games.
Yeah, no, it'll. I got to see how the rest of footballing calendar is going to line up for the year before I.
Oh yes, your trip to Qatar. We have booked your flights. Tell us about how it goes. I'm sure it'll be fun. You can be our man on the ground.
It would be
melting
nice.
into the sidewalk.
It would be nice.
Hey, if you want to go, I will get you accredited.
I got a dream. We're going to Qatar.
Steve, I know you're probably not going to Qatar. Are you going to make it to your first Pacific game this season?
Like fit in Qatar probably pretty well.
Yeah,
Pacific probably. I probably would join. Oh, actually, I'd be concerned they might take my passport as well. I think I probably would make it to a Pacific game or two this year. I think, especially if it everything kind of winds down, cross fingers and toes and whatever nuts. But if everything goes well, I probably definitely will attend a game or two here and there.
We could maybe all get over on the 10th of April for that championship game. We can see how that goes. Now, these dates have been put out there by a couple of different places just now, but it's not been confirmed as far as I understand, which is the dates for the Canadian Championship. With the first round on May 10th to 12th, quarterfinals May 24th to 26th, the semis in June 21st to 23rd, and the finals somewhere between the 12th and the 4th of July.
Those are all midweek, right? Like normal?
Yeah. I read an interesting article on Guelph Today, because I obviously read Guelph Today all the time. Someone had shared it with me because it was an article on Guelph United, who won League One BC last year and will be in the Canadian Championship for the first time. They're hoping that they can get drawn at home, and it's going to cost them over $10,000 to get their stadium up to scratch if they want to host a game, because they have to get rid of all the football lines and they have to have proper broadcasting facilities and everything like that. But they feel it would put Guelph on the map and it would be worth it. So fingers crossed that they do get that. But that article and quotes from the Guelph camp seem to indicate that the three MLS sides won't be coming into the tournament this year until the quarterfinals.
If Vancouver gets preferential treatment over teams that have eliminated them, including last year, that's pretty sad.
But the Whitecaps were the highest finishing MLS team.
It should be
Toronto as the team
Toronto
that bows out, and that's why all three teams are probably going to be in the quarterfinals.
But this is apples and oranges, right? You should compare it to the previous year's tournament. Right?
Zach, not the rules that they have stated in the past.
Yeah.
It's on standings in their own domestic league.
I hear you. I know that's how they've done in the past, but it should be like the competition you're in should be impacted by the previous year's competition.
But you just have to look at the Champions League. You can win the Champions League in CONCACAF and not even be in the tournament the next year, because it's all based on league positioning.
Yeah, I don't agree with you, Zach. There, I do agree.
In different leagues.
I think if you substitute TFC for Vancouver, then I agree with your point there. TFC should be the team that has to play in the first round.
Yeah.
And allow other teams to get.
Yeah,
there.
Pacific as champions, I think should get a bye to the quarterfinals.
TFC was the worst MLS team in their standings, so they should be the one playing in the first round.
Montreal, the holders as well.
I'd be okay with that for Toronto as well. I just think that I think they should shift from what they've done in the past, and it should be about what you did in the competition the year before.
Yeah, they have to. If they're going to do that, they have to announce it that from next season.
Yeah,
how you do this year. Yeah, the problem is, like last year, Mark DeSantis was fuming that the Whitecaps did not get a bye, and I'm pretty sure that if the CSA went to Toronto and said, yeah, you're going to be in from the first round, Toronto's going to be like, no, we're not.
Mark DeSantis wasn't helped out by his organization who chose to play the game away.
Yeah, but that was you say that, but then at the same time, that was the Whitecaps growing the game in BC.
No, yeah.
It's all about TFC at this point.
Yeah,
TFC is the one that should be in the first round.
Oh, yeah. Hey, don't get me wrong. I think TFC should not have a bye past the other teams either. Like I think
it should be Pacific, Montreal. If there's three teams get buys, it should be Vancouver, Montreal, and Pacific as according to last year's rules. And 100%. If you want to change it, then you change it before this tournament is played this year.
Yeah,
you say this year.
I also agree with you guys that you need to announce these things ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then you're just going to be the MLS napkin rule setup that you have, where you change rules at a dinner.
But they've already done that, right?
They have done it a few times.
Yeah, because Vancouver has been jobbed at least once or twice.
That's the problem, and that's where I think they're just going to job Pacific this time. It's just going to be a different BC team.
It's like, oh yes, SBC. We don't care about them. Let's talk a little bit quickly about Pacific and some of the off-season stuff there. So, I mean, Pamadou Ka has now gone. He's now joined the second team down for Dallas in Texas.
I like Pa. I don't agree with that move at all.
Yeah,
it's a strange one. We've not really had a chance to chat about it on the show, but James Merriman's come in, which I think was always the plan anyway. He's been there since day one. He was the assistant to Silberbauer. He was assistant to Pa.
He's local,
Local, knows the community. His dad and whole family's involved in the local community. I think it's a great appointment. I think it's the right appointment. And all the best to James in this. What Pa's chosen to do, though, now obviously he went far in the process for Dallas for getting the MLS job. So, I mean, we spoke in the last part about Kwame Awua, and we said sometimes you maybe have to take a year to kind of bet on yourself. And I do wonder if Pa's like, I'm going to do this to get in the MLS system, show what I can do here, and then if I do well, I'll get an MLS job next season.
Yeah, possibly.
It's the only thing that makes sense to me.
I don't see that happening, though. I don't think people are going to be looking at MLS 2 teams. Like, if he went as an assistant, that's fine, but MLS 2, I don't think there's going to be that many hires from that position. MLS 2 coaches tend to go into become assistants at the MLS level.
Yeah. Also, a few of them that have got jobs have struggled. Look at LA Galaxy.
I still think he should have stayed a year or two or more at Pacific and kind of continue to prove himself at that level.
Yeah, I agree. Considering that he had CONCACAF too to play it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Pa leaving, there's been so many other departures at Pacific as well. There has been an addition, apart from James Merriman. Stuart Neely,
yes,
my fellow Scot, has joined Pacific as new technical director of football. Last couple of seasons he's been at UBC Thunderbirds on the women's side of things. Obviously has had involvement with the Whitecaps before, TFC before, the college game out east. I think it's a good appointment.
I've always had a lot of time for Stuart Neely.
Yeah.
I think when he was with the Academy of the Whitecaps, he was very open with his perspectives.
I remember we had that conversation at Newton Athletic Park that we had that one time.
Yeah. He I think it's a good appointment for Pacific, and he'll certainly help James Merriman a lot of stuff as well. If we look at some of the playing departures, though, like Lucas McNaughton, we talked about that in the last part. He's gone to TFC now. Ollie Bassett has gone to Ottawa. Tern Campbell and Alejandro Hojapur have gone to Forge. Those last three,
all free,
and it's because of these 1 year deals that clubs sign, and they don't get anything in return. There's so many transfers within the league. There's so many 1 year deals done, and I understand why, because you don't know if a player's going to work out. You don't want to give them a deal and be stuck with them. We've got this problem at East Fife at the moment. We're about to get relegated. We gave so many players this year 2 year deals. We're now stuck with these guys for next season, and they're not up to the job. So I understand why smaller clubs go with the 1 year deals. It's also the peril of the salary cap in this league, and with it being so low that, I might want to keep this guy, but he's wanting more money, and we can't really afford to give him money because we wouldn't be able to fill the roster or whatever. So then someone like Ollie Bassett goes to Ottawa, and then Forge snap up these guys because, I mean, I was going to touch on Forge later, but we'll touch on them now. Apart from Campbell and Hojapur, they've added Ashton Morgan. They've also added Kwasi Poku and former Whitecaps trialist Abukar Sissoko, who's joining them from Halifax. So Forge seem to be doing well with their salary cap, but obviously we've talked money that they might get for winning things and their CONCACAF League involvement and everything like that as well. I don't like, Zach, that there's so much movement within the league.
I think it's part of the like growing pains and of being such a young league, right? Like, I think it's I don't like it either personally, but I think it's like hopefully as things grow and the hopefully over time the salary budget or whatever grows, that you'll see this change as well. When it comes to the moves you made, I think it's important to note that Pacific made money off McNaughton.
Yes,
and that'll help.
150, I believe it was.
That'll help them as a football club.
Manuel Veth broke that Amir Didic is going to be going to them, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. But at least that is a very, very good addition for them. And in all honesty, I think a possible upgrade on McNaughton, who was a key player for them, and you saw his value to the team when he wasn't there. I don't think he's that great a centre-back, to be perfectly honest. I'm not just saying that because he's left.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't let him take a penalty, that's for sure.
Yeah. But I do feel it's a bit of a rebuilding program maybe for Pacific this season, and James Merriman's going to have to act smart and get some guys in. I mean, there's been some key players re-signed. Callum Irvin, Jamar Dixon, their captain, Josh Herd, Baldy, Diaz, Dadaluke. It's a decent core, but he needs to get some key guys. And there's still time, but I definitely think he needs to look at some guys and get some big additions in there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what it finally looks like. But for sure they're going to need some, I think, further reinforcements.
Well, Forge looks so strong, and they are making the additions now because they're kicking off in Champions League action. First time ever CPL team in the Champions League. Cruz Azul. It's not going to get too much tougher than that. Home and away on February 16th and 24th. So we wish them all the best in that. But when you see them just adding all these top talents, it's hard to look beyond them this year, I think. But I don't know. Yeah. It gets to the playoffs and single championship games and anything can happen. But let's get our travel gear on. Let's go around the world and let's move down under next, because some sad news coming out of down under. Friend of the show, although I don't know if he is anymore, since he didn't seem to like us a little bit towards the end. But former Whitecaps head coach Kyle Robinson sacked by Western Sydney Wanderers this week. I watched his last game in charge. It was shocking. The commentators had turned on him. They described the performance as abject. They said it looked like 11 players from a second team that had gone out for a kickabout and were told not to tackle the first team guys. It was brutal commentary, but it was a brutal performance, and he has really struggled with them. Shades of Whitecaps 2018, has to be said, with how the team was playing. Not good at all. I don't think it was a surprise. I've been on like Robbo sack watch for a few weeks, but obviously wish Robbo well. Where do you think he might end up next? I think it has to be somewhere like the English Championship or League One.
Yeah, you'd think his time in Australia would be done.
I don't think he's getting another job in Australia.
I don't think he'll be back in America. So, no. Yeah, I think you're right. Probably somewhere in the UK. I wish him well.
For me, the description that you're giving, it seems like the players gave up on him.
Yeah.
It felt like it in that game. I have to say that.
For me, that's more on the players than Carl Robinson.
Well, I think what was telling as well was yesterday they played their first game without him in charge and they won 1-0. But you do often get a kind of new kick, a new bump as well. But you can watch the A-League free and legal on YouTube. The channel is called Keep Up, all one word. They've got games on regularly, men and women's A-League as well. But we're leaving Australia now. We're getting to Africa, because the African Nations Cup is on. It's the final coming up on Sunday. It's not been a great tournament. I've actually been quite disappointed in it, to be honest. Goals have come hard to come by. In the group game, there was 4 0-0 matches and 15 1-0 games. It has not been very exciting. It's got a bit more exciting than knockouts. There's been a couple of penalty shootouts because of 0-0 draws. But I wanted to mention this for a couple of things. One, the players have looked tired out there. And I think the result is there's not a lot of quality. And I think part of that is they've been playing so much football. And that, to me, is a sign of what we would see if we switched to biennial World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
I think we would get more tournaments like this. It's not been great to watch. And that is, you're going to run these players into the ground.
Yeah. Oh, totally. That World Cup every 2 years is like one of the worst things I've heard in a while.
Yeah.
Worst ideas I've heard in a while.
I'm just scrolling through some of the games, and all I see is like there's a lot of red cards. Besides some of these games, there's been a lot of red cards.
They don't have VAR,
especially the round of 16. They were like,
Kai Sierra Leone did okay, right? They got out of
yes,
group, right?
Except he then missed a vital penalty, and his house was under police protection.
Yeah, and then people were going to his house. I saw that.
Yeah. The final's coming up on Sunday, though. It's Senegal versus Egypt. Egypt's won it the most times, 7. Senegal have never won it, so you kind of want the underdog, but I have been to Egypt, and speaking to folk there, they just love their football so much.
So it looks like Senegal's the team that's scoring a lot of goals, though.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it's Sadio Mane versus Mo Salah?
Yes,
basically,
it is.
Okay.
Yeah. A couple of other things just to talk about from the tournament. There was a deadly crush before Cameroon played Comoros in the round of 16. 8 deaths, just so sad.
Horrific.
And the semi-final that I watched today was in that stadium. And they had talked about possibly not playing it there. I don't know that they should have. It was just a bit eerie seeing another game getting played there. But that game, though, had one of the stories of the tournament, because COVID had hit the Comoros Island so hard, and all 3 of their goalkeepers were out. They had a left back playing in goal. They only lost 2-1, and they had a couple of close calls themselves. It was a fantastic performance. I think they kind of captured the hearts of the footballing world there.
Yeah.
And another game, I don't know if you guys saw, Tunisia versus Mali, one of the early group games, where the Zambian ref blew for full time in the 85th minute.
I heard about that, yeah.
And the Tunisian players were going mental at him. And then he eventually restarted and then blew full time in the 89th minute. There had been substitutions, goals, and water breaks. And he's like, no, that's it. I'm going off now at 89 minutes. He didn't get to referee another game in the tournament.
Maybe they're not paying overtime there.
Maybe. So we're going to leave Africa now. We're heading to Scotland because I've got to talk about this. And it's not a nice story, but I just think this is a great example of football clubs being tone deaf. It's like a 101 for any football clubs on how not to handle a controversial signing. So before we get into this story, it's going to discuss some sensitive stuff, and it might be stuff that people find very upsetting or they don't want to listen to. So this is pretty much the end of the show, apart from wavelength. So if you decide you don't want to listen to this, then I would maybe switch off now, because it's going to cover things of a sexual nature, and if people have been following like the Mason Greenwood stuff this week, it's going to touch on similar issues to that. So just a little warning to people before we get into that. Raith Rovers signed a player on Monday night at the transfer deadline called David Goodwillie. Now, David Goodwillie used to be a really good prospect. Played for Dundee United in the era that produced so many other top players came through that Dundee United team. Unfortunately, David Goodwillie, off the pitch, he'd been convicted twice for assault. And then there was an incident with him and another player where he was charged with rape. And it didn't get to the criminal courts because they didn't think they could get a conviction. So the criminal case fell down. So he was never convicted in a criminal court of rape. So the victim took him through the civil courts. The judge said that, yep, the players had raped the girl and awarded her £100,000 in damages. So then, obviously after that, he was convicted of that, and his career as a top-class footballer was over. Rightly so. He then signed for a lower league team called Clyde, and Clyde play in East Fife's division. There was quite a lot of uproar, but because it was a smaller team, it didn't make all the the national headlines. So he's been at Clyde for 5 years. He's played against these Fife several times. You can imagine the abuse that he gets at matches. He is a very good player at that level. So it was rumoured that he was going to sign for Raith Rovers. And one of their most prominent sponsors is the crime writer Val McDermott. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She's written so many crime books and won a lot of awards. So she said if Raith signed him, she would be ending her sponsorship of the club. So on Monday night, they did sign him. There was a huge public outcry. She tweeted that she was taking her support away. She sponsors the home jerseys. The away jersey sponsor said, we want to terminate immediately. We do not want our names on your shirt. Other sponsors pulled out. Board members resigned. Club people resigned. The women's team captain resigned. Another women's player resigned. The women's team said, we don't want to be called Raith Rovers anymore. And they were setting up their own club. Raith Rovers, though, issued a statement that was the most tone-deaf statement ever, where they said that they basically acknowledge what has happened with him in the past, but this was signed for footballing reasons, Zach, because basically, and I'm summarising, but not that much, he's a good footballer, so that's why we've signed him. How would you react if your club did that?
It's one thing when you don't know how people are going to respond, right, after a period of time. But when it was so clear that the response was by the people who are your club was going to be so negative, it's a little bit surprising that they didn't course correct before signing him.
Yep.
One other thing I think is important in this, Michael, from what I've read and what you've told me and stuff, is even though he had to pay this money, he has kind of not been remorseful.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that he's always denied it. He's never shown any remorse or any contrition. He appealed the decision. It got thrown out in the appeal courts. So he's never admitted to it. And there's been folks stick up for him because they say, well, he never had a criminal conviction. It was just a civil conviction. And it's like, that does not matter.
Yeah. Because I'm someone who believes in forgiveness.
I do as well, but you have to earn that forgiveness.
Well, yeah, I would say that if someone didn't show remorse, then it's hard for society in general.
Overall, from a moral standpoint, you don't do these, and it's just there's so much, like you mentioned it yourself, so much tone deafness in this from every step of the way. Even people like not realizing your main sponsor is saying that I'm going to pull if you do sign this guy. You still had an opportunity not to sign the guy, and you did anyways. That's what doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Forget after he was signed. Before he was signed, there was enough of an uproar where you don't do it.
Yeah. Going with what you say there, Steve, this is what their initial statement said. As with all new signings, the club has carefully considered our position as a community club, and we completely respect the differing views amongst fans and stakeholders, many of whom have spoken to us directly. As he previously played for Raith Rovers, we consider him to be part of Raith Rovers Football Club. And then the last sentence is, first and foremost, this was a football-related decision. So, after all the outrage, they were meant to be playing him on Tuesday night, but he failed a fitness test and didn't actually play in that game. It was
Mental fitness or physical fitness?
Yeah. Fit and proper, I think, was possibly the test that he may have failed.
So what jerseys did they wear that night?
Well, they wore their normal home strips. Queen of the South, who they were playing, wore their third strip, which is a special pink strip that they're wearing this season to promote against violence against women. It was like beautiful by Queen of the South to do that. It was like a fantastic that they did that. And they got a late equaliser, which made it all the better. But today, they've backtracked and they've said, we got it wrong. In reaching our original decision, we focused far too much on football matters and not enough on what this decision would mean for our club and the community as a whole. And they said that they've listened over the last couple of days. It's an unfortunate incident. I can therefore confirm that following a meeting of Raith Rovers board, the player will not be selected by Raith Rovers, and we will enter into discussions with the player regarding his contractual position. They've paid a fee for him, they've given him a 2-year deal, but they've now said they're not going to pay him or play him, but he's still their player. So either the player's going to say, okay, I'll just walk away, or they're going to have to give him a payout. Either way, it's taken outrage by the fans, sponsors walking away, people cancelling season tickets, but they've still paid all this money for the guy. It baffles me as to how a club can be so stupid.
If they mutually agree to terminate ways, even if they have to pay him something, then he can go sign somewhere else, right?
That's the best way.
He can be a free agent.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it, because then he's not even in your, like, somebody will keep putting him, even if somebody deletes him, somebody will stick him on the Wikipedia page. Definitely as a roster player.
Well, this thing will be on the Wikipedia page forever under controversy or scandal.
So it's best to just say, okay, we'll pay you this amount. Just go and sign with somebody else.
Will the sponsors return now?
I think they will.
Okay,
but there's not a guarantee, because it's taken out, like they've gone against him knowing what the backlash was, and even after the backlash they issued that statement. Yeah. So I think many will, but I'm not sure that all of them will. I don't know if the women's team will. Last couple of things I want to say on this. What's been forgotten in all of this is the victim. This poor woman, every couple of years has to go through and relive this and have it played out in the media and see his face everywhere because he's signed for another club. This poor woman's got to go through that, and it's just shocking that this has to be the case. But I don't know what it is with footballers. And we talked about in the first part, the rise of the Premier League documentary and all the fame and the celebrity footballer. But you've got these young men that are paid so much money and they're celebrities, and they can get all the women that they want. And they ruin young women's lives forever. For what? And they ruin their careers and they ruin their own lives as well. And you've got the whole Greenwood thing that's going on just now. It's like, why do you do that? And you ruin a woman's life, you ruin your life, you ruin your family's life, and the stigma that goes with it. I don't get it. It just seems to be more and more. There's been so many in the last year, footballers that's been arrested for these kind of things and investigated for these things. It's absolutely shocking.
It's true, right? Ronaldo is not will never go to America again because he'll get arrested, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's essentially like what it is these players, and it's not just footballers, it's every sport. These guys have been told that they're the greatest, all like from a very young age. They think they can get away with anything. And when somebody puts a little bit of opposition towards them, they just can't handle it. And that's essentially all it is. So things got to be fixed at a young age to tell them that you just don't treat people this way, even if you are a superstar athlete. And that's all it is. It's as simple as that. You just can't keep praising these young players and letting them know that they could get away with anything.
But you think with all the high-profile cases that these people would learn, and they just don't seem to.
They don't, because they don't think that they're above. They think, it happened to him, but it won't happen to me. I'll get away with it. And that's the problem.
It's so sad. And I know it's not an easy subject to talk about. I'm sorry if anyone that's listening to this is quite upset, or if you've been affected by this. Just make sure that you speak to someone about any of the issues that we've raised. So we'll finish with a much happier thing, which is going to be this week's Wavelength. And we're continuing our travels around the world by going to Holland for this episode's Wavelength, and a song from 2020, a band called Grime Deluxe. And this is a song taken from their Illegal Alien album, and it's simply called Football.
Offside, football, it's an injury. Sliding, trainer, 90 minutes playing time. Hydrate, gloves, half-time break. ladder, you have hit the woodwork. Oh, cheering and a running linesman. Offside, football, it's an injury. Sliding, trainer, 90 minutes play time. Hybrid, gloves, half-time break. Transport, midfield, box play. Grass, ladder, you have hit the woodwork.
Dutch artist Grime Deluxe there with a song from 2020 called Football, taken from their Illegal Alien album. You can find that on Bandcamp. Simplicity at its finest. I enjoyed that one. Let us know what you thought. Also, don't forget you can donate to this year's fund drive on CITR Radio, citr.ca/donate. But that is it for this episode of the show. Just before we go, guys, let everyone know where they can find you online. Any final thoughts or anything that you've learned this week, Steve?
So you can find me on Twitter at Whitecapsbeat. And what I think probably learned this week, it's probably easier to get a visa for a Brazilian waxer than a Brazilian soccer player.
I think sad but true. Zach, any final thoughts from you? Anything that you've learned this week from your travels to Hamilton and back?
You follow me on Twitter if you want, at Zachary AM. And yeah, I think I said it earlier, but I've got a dream. We're going to Qatar.
And of course, the best ever Wavelength song that we've played is We Have a Dream by the Scotland 1982 World Cup team. Didn't go very good for them. Hopefully it goes better for Canada and Qatar, but that's still one of my all-time favourite football songs. I am Michael McCall. Find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Read all our stuff, aftn.ca. Give us a like, subscribe, etc. on YouTube, youtube.com/AFTN Canada, and leave reviews, please, on all the podcast places if you enjoy this show. It would really help us out. But that is it for this episode of the AFTN Soccer Show. We will be back soon with our Valentine's Day love special. Until then, thanks for listening. Take care, and Mon, the Caps, and Ali La Rouge.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.
EF